interesting to sit and just listen to the history of an area where you live. And obviously I'm, like, as you all know, about to have a child who's going to grow up here, and so just being able to sort of understand how like migrants specifically have, especially South Asian migrants, have changed the fabric of this area and how it's sort of come to be essentially what it is today, and feeling rooted somewhere a bit more than I did before the start of the project. So
for me, I guess it's impacted me massively. I'm a historian, so I've done quite a few sort of oral histories, not doing the interviews myself, but I use them quite a lot. I didn't realise how much of like an emotional connection I would have to this.
We came here in dribs and drabs from 1960s. We're a big family, so we came 2 at a time or 4 at a time. And I came here in 1972, so I was about 11.
My dad worked for the British Naval Base in Singapore. And when Britain left Singapore, all his friends and my dad had a choice to either come to the UK or make their own decisions and go back to Kerala. Dad decided to go back to Kerala, and he built a really nice house, and I think all his money finished. So he came to the UK. That in itself was a journey. He went with my uncle to Bombay, where my uncle was, and then from there he'd taken Egyptian Airlines to come to the UK, and took a coach to Victoria, and then a black cab all the way from Victoria to East Howe. His mates were out working, so my dad did have to wait till quite late in the evening to be let in. So that's how he got to be here. And then he worked really hard and bought his first house, and bought my mum, my older brother and my little sister over first. And my older sister and myself, we stayed back with my grandma, my mum's mum. And then we came over a couple of years later. So then we're all united back here in the UK.
I've never sort of felt such an emotional connection to, people, to a subject than, prior to this. And I think the food aspect is definitely what has really shocked me, is that how much, emotion and like how many memories and how much connection is attached to food. And I think listening to people talk about food and, sort of weaving their lives and, their histories of migration and their sort of loss and their, love and all these things attached to food. And I think it's so emotional to listen to, but I think at the same time it's so beautiful and it's so joyful. And, I think I've definitely got a sort of greater appreciation of food since, joining the project in general, and recognising the importance of that in our lives and the importance of, where that sort of is situated. And I think it's really beautiful to listen to people who've migrated, who've, gone through very different experiences, to say what we may have experienced in terms of access to food, in terms of, when they migrated, the history, the sort of culture, but also listen to like the ties and sort of have that emotional connection. So I think it's been really beautiful to view food in such a different way, I'd say.
Herring was very popular in our house. For some reason, my mother thought herring tasted a little bit like ilish, the national fish in Bangladesh, right? Yes, so herring was a regular in our house. Then after we buying the vegetables and the fish and the onions, we would walk across Green Street, past Placid Road, Placid Grove, and a bit further up there used to be a halal meat shop. So we used to buy some lamb and some chicken, and then come back to Placid Road, and into Placid Road. Soon on the right, there used to be one shop. It was a Gujarati shop. They used to sell, rice and dal and spices and so on. So some items used to buy from there. Then walk again a bit further, and Nagrecha was on the left. And then we'd stop in Nagrecha to buy more stuff. And then by that time, me and my older brother, we got all this stuff. It was so heavy, but we still kind of walked home. I don't remember exactly, what we used to buy from Nagrecha or and Ranansan, the other one. But my mom said those shop, used to buy like dal and rice and spices and things like that.
Realize how big of a part food played in people's lives. You just think of it as something you have every day and it doesn't mean much, but actually it does. I think if I had to really sit down and think about it, it does mean a massive amount, and you can see how much it means to people, like how much love and passion, especially these women who have like come from abroad, and sometimes it's all they have, it's all the connection that they have to where they come from, and you can tell how much they care about it and how important it is to keep up their own legacy of where they come from and how proud they are of it. I think like sometimes growing up as like a second gen immigrant, maybe you were made to feel like ashamed of your food sometimes, that it smelled a certain way, or it wasn't the standard like sandwiches with white bread, but like I think this project has been so important in showing how much of a legacy food has in South Asian heritage, and it's like a pride that I'll take away.
Most of our cooking has also been a fusion of Chinese, Singaporean type food, Kerala food. So, for example, adding soy sauce to maybe a chicken curry, or sweet chili sauce to a fish dish. So it's a bit of a fusion, but also knowing our traditional roots of Kerala food.
In Malaysia, we don't have certain fruits that we find in Europe. For example, kiwi, we have one, it's called chiku. Similar, it's sweet, whereas kiwi is a mix of sour and sweet. And then there are lots of grapes, and the grapes here are big size compared to the grapes in Malaysia. So like strawberry, we find here everywhere strawberry, and the smell is so beautiful.
I think one of the most amazing things about this portion of the project has been able to capture historic stories in the present and bring life back to history that we may have forgotten or may have been buried in our childhood and we haven't thought about in a really long time. And I think that's been a really wonderful thing to see out of participants, and also whilst we're listening to their stories, reflect on our own stories and think, oh, I now remember where food transferred into this area of my life and this really important event. And I think it's interesting that we've been given this platform to rethink, and we've given others a platform to think about what they're doing and how food is correlated into their life story. So I think it's a really important and beautiful part of our journeys.
I think the difference comes that the landlord was from India, we were from Africa, the other tenants were from India, and even though we're Indians, we're very different. Their behavior was very different from ours, and that was something that we as children weren't aware of.
So my father bought a cooking book, and my mother, from the cooking book, she learned to bake bread and make cakes. So she used to make regular, she used to make a lot of bread and keep them in the fridge and so on, so that we can eat every day. And so she also learned how to bake cakes. So this was like probably in 1975 or something like that.
And so I think like showing that actually women were central to keeping culinary culture alive and bringing that over from whatever South Asian country, women were the most important factors in that. Obviously there were different factors at play, and traditionally we're in labour and things like that. But I really hope that people are able to go to archives in the future, listen to some of these stories, and recognise that East London food culture is what it is today because of women, and we are where we are today as South Asian second generation women ourselves because of our mothers, grandmothers who worked behind the scenes, often without complaint, just to keep the culture alive.
The Bangladeshis love dried fish. We call it shutki or hutki, right? Now it smells so strong. Some people love it and some people just hate it. They can't stand it. But in our house, except my older brother, everybody else used to love it. but we couldn't get dried fish in this country. So what my mother used to do, she used to cut fish into small pieces and just leave them on the grill. You know, the old cooker, gas cooker had this top bit where you can grill things. So she used to leave them there. And over a couple of days, they used to dry, become a little bit like the dried fish that we were used to. So they did taste nice, but obviously it wasn't like the authentic one they used to get in Bangladesh, but they were good enough for us to enjoy the dried fish that what we used to enjoy before. Now, what my mother also did, she started to use the grill and the oven to make curries, you know. So basically she would mix chops, lamb chops with onions and, you know, all the ingredients that you put in a curry, and also in chicken, and she used to cook them in oven. What we realized is cooking, you know, curry stuff in oven and grill was so much tastier than even normal curries.
We found out much later that we were trilingual. Our food, even in Africa, had a mixture of African foods as well as Indian foods, which when we came here thought was Indian food. And then it was a self-discovery when we came here of things that we thought we were, we weren't. Yeah.
But my grandma's cooking is, I can still taste the fish curry that she would make, and what we call like podichora, so that's rice wrapped in a banana leaf with a couple of like just few curries that are not runny, kind of not runny curries, and that is just yummy. And obviously I think not everyone gets that skill, so my mum definitely picked up my grandma's cooking skills. And so when she came here, she made most of the dishes she could from back home, but using and substituting some of the vegetables with English vegetables. So rather than getting avial, which is a melody of mixed vegetables and quite a traditional Kerala dish, which I'm going to prepare later, she would perhaps make more like broccoli or carrots or beetroot.
It's that it's not just like, you know, the women were the ones that were cooking, and it really seems like this project has like shed light on the fact that it was just such a family activity, whether it be, you know, the mothers, the grandmothers. It seemed like, especially when there were children in the family, that it was the children that would often be in the kitchen doing something, whether that be like chopping onions or like, you know, preparing the salad. You know, there was always something that the other people, regardless of like gender or age, there would always be not just one person in the kitchen. It was definitely like a family activity, and that was really lovely to see like develop as like a common theme within like the participants' interviews, because it seemed like it was, yeah, sure, South Asian women were the ones to initiate cooking, but it was more of like a way of bringing up the family as opposed to just like cooking a meal in that one instance.
We definitely had a mixture of English, Oriental and Indian food. So schools had cooking classes as well. So we had to take ingredients in for shepherd's pie or, you know, a meringue, and so we would be making that and bringing it home. So I guess school dinners formed the first part of having quite a lot of English food.
Has touched my inner self. I felt I was reliving my journey, migrating from one country to this country. And in that journey, whilst being with the participants, being with the volunteers, as a group, everyone, it relived my emotion, and it brought about something that was within me I did not realize was so deep within me. And this project has helped to bring it out of me, and the emotions shared by the sentiment shared by everyone is similar. The journey, the food has played so much part into the South Asian communities. I'm sure not just the South Asian communities, it would have, whoever has come into this country, food has been the underlying raw emotion, and the food is what brings everyone together as well. And via food, I feel that the barriers are broken. And living in Newham, there is so much of a diverse community that the same rawness which I felt would be felt by everyone that's within the Newham diverse community.